wanted to share with you some of the latest tech demos that I have here for ShopBirdy. This demo I actually built over the past couple of weeks, but I don't think I shared this on the channel yet. So let me just quickly go through what the ShopBirdy MCP dashboard looks like when you want to set a batch of image generations. You want to set a job for the ShopBirdy MCP server to create many images. So this is for an automotive client. So let's say you are, in the automotive industry, you're a vehicle manufacturer, and you want to create a whole bunch of images for your vehicles. Well, turns out image generation models are really good at creating what I call manufactured goods. So these are things that are steel, glass, ceramics, furniture, vehicles, home architecture, those kinds of things. So you can actually use image generation. You can use the ShopBirdy MCP tool to create images. And what's also very cool about that is you can create keyframes and then turn them into videos. So let's say, for example, I create images like this. As you can see, these are various styles of probably Tesla-influenced electric vehicles, and they are basically illustrating a vehicle driving along a Pacific highway on the coast. You can see the Pacific Ocean there. You can see it's pretty much golden hour. Very cool, sleek, awesome visuals. All of this was done using generative AI. It looks really good. And then once you have those images, you can feed those images into a video model and then create short video clips of that image, which I think is just really awesome. So as you can see here, you get the sense of the vehicle traveling. It does really cool transitions. And if you have these very nice references, because the image is going to have a much higher image fidelity and resolution than the video that you'll create. So that works really well in terms of creating the keyframes and the set pieces and the different shots that you want to have in the video. So this, to me, this really reminds me of driving along the Pacific Highway. This looks to me like this could be like San Diego. This could be like the Del Mar, Torrey Pines area. It just has that vibe, which is really cool. I used to drive up and down the was it the 5, Interstate 5, and you would have a stretch of road where you would see this kind of a beautiful coast, and you'd have the sunset, and you'd look over across the Pacific Ocean, and you if you were like me, you would wonder what's happening on the other side. So this, I think, is really cool. So you can turn all of your images into videos, which I think is pretty awesome. You can do that with this tool. So let's say you create these kinds of images, and then you want to post them to your LinkedIn. I'm not connected to the LinkedIn here, so I won't actually demonstrate that, but you could effectively automatically create scheduled posts for all of these clips or images, and the system would write the caption, and then if you were connected to your LinkedIn, it would just post it for you on your behalf. So I think that's really cool. So this is what it would look like if you were to set off a batch of image generations. And I think in this case we did over 100, and I think the results kind of speak for themselves. Look really awesome. And keep in mind that this is using the image generation models. I think from here will only get much better. So we can expect higher fidelity, we can expect much richer details, and we would probably have better, like right now, some of the issues we have with these models is that they don't actually capture the text very well. The labels sometimes get garbled. I think that's going to be improved over time. So let's say, for example, that we have a product listing page, a PLP, and that's what you would normally see in an e-commerce store. Is you would see a whole bunch of products listed in a particular category, and then you wanted to check the PDP, which is the product detail page or the description page. So here you would have, let's say this is Cradle glass. They are a premium glass manufacturer, and you wanted to actually buy this product. A lot of times you're going to see these studio shots, which are pretty much going to be the product isolated with essentially no background and no context, but it just shows the product itself. This is actually great because it provides a great reference point that the model can then learn from and then create and place within a variety of different scenes and backgrounds. But the challenge is that this is not very personalized. And also, depending on that image that you've taken, the reference, over time, you may want to upscale that image because over time we have higher resolution screens on our phones and on our computers, but the image itself might have a fixed resolution. So if we were to zoom in on this, we could see that there's some artifacts, some pixelization there. And so we might want to figure out a way, how can we maintain these images, use that as a great reference, but then enhance them? Because ultimately what we want to do is we want to sell these products, but to do so effectively, we want to contextualize it for the customer. These are almost luxury level glassware, but they're not within any context. So I think what would be more effective is to communicate what are the situations in life whereby we would be toasting and cheering and wanting to actually enjoy these beverages or these glasses, and what are the beverages that would be served within them. The thing about DALL is that they are a unique global glassware manufacturer. I think they might be from Austria, and they kind of pioneered or kind of championed creating unique glassware for the different grape varietals. So they have special glassware that is intended for, let's say, red wine and white wine and cold beverages and cocktails and so forth. So there's actually a pairing of the glass with the actual drink that you're having it in. I mean, this could even be almost like a margarita glass. I don't think it is, but it kind of looks like it. So that is something that I thought, if we could effectively use all of the excellent studio reference images, but then enhance them using something like a ShopBirdy MCP, then you could create something like this. And I think this looks really cool. What we've done is we've incorporated some of the brand guidelines and the feeling of that brand and placed the product within contexts that really match that brand. So here we chose luxury lifestyle. We've also contextualized it to kind of speak to people in Thailand, for example. So here you can see like we've actually placed these glasses on a boat in Phuket, for example. We've been inspired by Phuket. So let's say you're on a yacht and you want to enjoy these great beverages, and you'd want to pair that with a glassware that is totally intended for the specific type of drink you want to have. So I think this does a great job of communicating, and you can see again that it has a beautiful reflections, and these look photoreal. These are hyper real. Now, we might be still a few steps away from just automatically posting this. In some cases, we probably can, but in other cases, we might want to do another pass with some sort of quality assurance, just to kind of help us filter through and highlight the ones that we feel are good to go to post automatically, and others that might need a bit of touch-up, retouching, or editing. And in some cases, maybe the AI can't do it end-to-end, but what it can do is it can save the graphic designer 80 to 90% of the time. It can save them 80 to 90% of the work, and then the graphic designer can just go in and clean up a bit of the details that, or maybe add something to the label. So you can see here, there's this is I think it's supposed to be a moe, but here the M is changed into an R. So if we were a graphic designer, we could just quickly patch that up, or even just replace that label or blank it out, and then we could ship this image to our marketing channels. But I just think that this actually does a much, much better job of contextualizing. You're in a luxury hotel, you are in a high-end fine dining establishment, you are on a luxury yacht, for example. That now pairs the glass with the context that the customer would be enjoying it with it, right? So I just cycle through some of these so you can see the quality. Again, we are going from something like this, which is perfectly fine, but this is a much, much higher fidelity, much more enhanced, and beyond just the actual pixels themselves, is also contextualized. So if you are having an online store and you want to personalize the feeling, you want to personalize the experience for your customers, whatever you know about the customers, it could be some of their order history, it could be their location, you might dynamically display the images that would speak to that particular customer. So here I think this is like a luxury villa, which looks really cool. Yeah, this is really awesome. Here we are at beach. Again, a luxury villa. And there's probably small details like the labeling on that. Again, that is a quick patch. You can very easily fix that up. Normally, when you get these kind of glasses, they might have stickers on them, so that indicates that they are, fresh from the manufacturer. You'd probably peel off those stickers, but sometimes you might want them there just for display purposes. Again, this is a limitation in the current level of the model. If you were to really zoom in on this, you could have true. You could have the label be very faithful, but if you are actually creating a nice, beautiful scene, then those tokens have to be allocated across everything in the image. And so sometimes text and other details like that get a little bit garbled, but that is something I think we can absolutely live with if we're getting quality like this. And I think the important thing to note is that these, you can just keep generating these, and then you can filter them you can filter them against your brand guidelines, style guidelines, and whatever, and then select the ones that you like the best. So out of a batch, you can then whittle that down into the best images for your particular brand or whatever you are advertising. But overall, I think that these are fantastic. So here you can see we're in maybe a luxury home, the kitchen area of a luxury home, and the story behind this could be you're celebrating, your son or daughter got into a great school, or maybe landed their dream job, and you want to celebrate. Or maybe it's a New Year's occasion, and you are celebrating on a rooftop bar in Thailand. Or maybe it's just a weekend or something, and you're getting together with friends, and you want to enjoy a nice beverage. So the great thing about this is that you can just create these at almost very little cost and no time, and just have a plethora of items to choose from. And then from there, you can find the ones that are ready to publish as is. And in other cases, you might want to actually have your graphic designer, or maybe someone on your creative team, do a quick touch up on it and just add something, change something. But again, this is saving them a ton of hops from going to different stock photo websites, or having to navigate through a bunch of folders and find all the reference images, and then find a background and then make it all look real. In this case, you can just generate them, and then experimenting with different prompt techniques helps you understand what really works, and then what things that you might want to, for the time being, avoid, simply because the results may not be perfectly there yet. But this, I think, is almost 100%, right? It's like probably high 90s% in terms of faithfully transferring the label and the text and everything else. This was in the very beginning of this batch. We did some of these prompting techniques, and the results were a little bit mixed. Some cases they looked really good. In other cases, it looks like it would need more touch up and more care in terms of the graphic designer going through Photoshop and possibly editing some of these images. In other cases, you're just like, we just won't use that one. We'll just re-roll and do another one, right? Like I kind of am reminded of the days of Dungeons and Dragons, where you wanted to roll a new character, right? Like you could just kind of mulligan and then just draw a new set of cards or roll a new character. It doesn't cost anything, pretty much, right? You just do it again, and then you'll end up finding something that looks absolutely amazing. No two images will likely to be ever the same, and I think it's important to note is what we're not doing is predefining a bunch of backgrounds and then just superimposing the image against the background. What we are doing is we are constructing a very rich, detailed prompt, passing through the reference image, and then having the model be creative and come up with something. So each generation will be unique, and what we have to do is kind of go through and iterate to find out what are the prompts that really produce the great results. How do we steer the model? How do we kind of put it on rails? Or how do we guide it towards producing the types of outcomes that we really want? And so the only way you can really do that is you have to test and iterate. And through that, you'll start figuring out what are the techniques where the models really excel at, and where they are, facing certain limitations. You just work within those constraints. But you can definitely get some absolutely amazing results using this model. Again, kind of goes back to what I was saying around these models they took a huge leap from the DALL, which was kind of more like surreal, abstract, kind of creative style images at a little bit lower quality fidelity, to the latest model available from OpenAI, which is the GPT Image 1. That was a huge step forward in terms of hyper realism. So they look photoreal in certain contexts and settings. So knowing that, and then also knowing that these models are really excel at faithfully reproducing manufactured goods. So things like glassware, like ceramics, which is actually perfect for manufacturing companies who are building tableware and glassware and so forth. These are actually sort of like industrial manufacturing companies, companies that you would think maybe would not be the initial beneficiaries of generative AI. In fact, they are some of the best positioned to take advantage of generative AI, especially as it comes to photorealism, because if you pass along in the prompt the dimensions of the product, right, which is typically part of the product description, you want to know how many fluid ounces and what is the overall dimensions and shape of the glassware. The model does a really good job of actually translating those dimensions into a scene faithfully, so that these glasses appear as real life glassware in a real world setting, on a table, on a shelf, on a countertop, on a rooftop bar. So I mean, you can look at this as the reroll happy set, where it's not actually that this is liquid. This is actually just colored glass. And I think with reroll, they are famous for, they do a lot of handcrafted glass as well. And they've also have very high-end machinery to create these glassware. But these are very high-end products. And I think if you are selling this, you'd probably want to dedicate, I don't know, $1 per image of that product. I mean, you might be selling the product at dozens of dollars, if not hundreds of dollars. Having a small investment in just creating an image that adheres to your brand guidelines, and you can essentially create unlimited photo shoots, and then use all of this as collateral that you can use. These are materials now that you can pass to your team, and your team can now be way more productive, right? They can, for every one image that they created in the past, they can probably now create 10, because the model is saving them 90% of the work. So you can effectively get a 10-to-1 ratio of output. So your team actually doesn't need to expand people count that much. You can actually just get much more productive, and I think it's more fun for the team, because now they're not always starting from a blank page. They're not bottlenecked by a lack of resources or lack of time. Now all of a sudden, part of their time can just be spent looking at amazing outputs from these models, and then using their own kind of design sense and sense of aesthetics to pick the images that best represent and communicate that product's value proposition, and who the ideal customer profile of this, and what's the kind of set and setting, the scene and background that we want to contextualize these products within. So if you are a manufactured goods company, especially in the luxury category, these models do a great job of producing luxury style settings. So whether it's luxury villas, or outdoor patios, or luxury hotels, right? These models do a fantastic job of that. And what the ShopBirdy system does is it effectively allows you to create multiple hundreds, dozens, hundreds, thousands versions of these. So rather than sitting there and prompting each image one by one, you can actually just define some of the parameters that you really like. Maybe you can prompt something and find a style that you want to set as a template, and then ask the ShopBirdy system to effectively replicate that across a variety of different scenes and settings, and then produce this with a very quick turnaround, and then figure out and filter through which ones you really like. And then the other thing is that the ShopBirdy MCP server can actually do a quality assurance pass. So as they generate the image, it can actually check to see if it should be regenerated, or you can just generate all the images and then asynchronously have the QA model go through and filter for you, so that you can have a stacked, ordered, ranked list of images that the model would say, and these are the best, and then these are maybe unclear, and these may be failing. And then instead of just throwing away the ones that fail, you might want to salvage them. You might want to actually, if you might like something about them, and then ask maybe your graphic designer to go in, or maybe yourself go into Photoshop and clean that up. And then in other cases, you're just like, wow, can't get any better, right? It's as good as it can possibly get. It's extremely compelling image, and I want to use that. So you can see in this particular image, it looks a little bit more like it's been superimposed. So the glass doesn't look like it is staged naturally in the scene. It looks more like we generated a background, and then we generated a product image, and then we just merged the two, which sometimes happens. So you essentially just want to re-roll this again, and you'd probably get a perfect example, like something like this. This looks like it is naturally in the scene. You can look at all the lighting, the shadows, the reflection, the refraction of the light. You can even see how the lighting from the red wine is actually passed through into the shadow itself, which is absolutely amazing, right? So in some cases, it almost can't get much better. You could probably only get higher resolution, but for the most part, you are getting probably 80 to 90% of the way there, and then we can use the sort of the failed generations, or the ones that aren't meeting your actual brand guidelines. You can actually use those to then train the model as as negative examples, so to speak. So something about the models that's important to understand is, like, sometimes we need to, the more we can explain to the model what we want, the better. And also the more that we can explain, like, not only the do's, but also the don'ts, that also helps guide the model a little bit better. So because it is sort of a creative medium, if you keep your prompt pretty open-ended, then the model will have a ton of different, potential outcomes that it can create. But if you steer it to say, here are the things that we want, and then also do not include certain things, like, for example, if we use other items in the background that consume a lot of tokens, like, let's say we want a really detailed human form, then we might have to trade off some of the tokens in our scene. And what happens is sometimes we run into the uncanny valley issue with where something looks real, but there's still something a little off about it. We can't quite accept that image as totally real at first glance. We might think, is this computer generated? But in other cases, if you're just walking past a kiosk or a digital billboard or some signage, you would expect that image is actually somewhat photoshopped, right? Because it needs to be in sort of a marketing context or an advertising format. So in that sense, you're already built in to understand, like, oh, that is a professional marketing image or professional advertising. And so you are expecting and more than willing to accept that it has actually been computer enhanced in some ways. But if we try to do something whereby it is a little bit realistic but also a little bit off, then that's where you get into the uncanny valley issue. But for the most part, I think that again, glassware, I think other manufactured goods, like even glasses, like optical lenses, optical frames, those would be great candidates, right? We could talk about furniture, we could talk about tableware. All of these, I think, would be excellent candidates for these image generation models. Again, I'm a little less focused on the human form at this point in time. I think there are some models that excel at that and are going to do really well within things like fashion context, like, let's put makeup on this person, or let's swap out their clothes, for example. I think there are models that do this extremely well, maybe change a hairstyle, for example. But for manufactured goods, I think there are things you can do in terms of passing the prompt, passing the dimensions of that product, using bounding boxes to kind of construct the scene with the right perspective and depth of field, and you can get output that looks absolutely incredible. I mean, this just looks, it looks absolutely photoreal. And I believe that if you were coming to an online store and you saw if you saw a PLP product listing page that looked like this, and then it was actually on the fly kind of hyper personalized to you. So if you were if you were at an island resort, for example, or if you were on a boat and then you saw an image like this, or you were planning a trip, right? If you were planning, a fishing trip, or you were just going to travel around the coast or the Gulf, and you wanted to have this to be a high-end retreat, then these kinds of images might speak to you, and you'd say, oh yeah, definitely. Not only do we want to have a great meal, but maybe we would spend, just as a conversation, right, around the table, it's like, why don't we talk about these glasses? Did you know, right? This glasses comes from this manufacturer in Austria, and it has over 200 years of history to it, and these are consistently ranked as among the best in the world. And then now, especially if you're in a luxury setting, you want to have these interesting topics of conversation, and just talking about the wine, talking about the glass, that can that's a few minutes to half an hour of conversation that is interesting for everyone around the table. So I think this ShopBirdy has done a fantastic job of helping to create much more visually appealing product detail page photos that will do a much better job, I think, of selling the products. Now, I have to say that this is not yet completely tested. So, I mean, while this isn't yet a running business in the sense of we can report that these numbers, I mean, when you replace your basic images, the raw images, with these enhanced high quality, hyper personalized images, it will lead in this higher click-through rate or more sales. But I'm very eager to get that data. So I'm actually looking to partner with brands who would like to trial this as a pilot and say, what happens if we actually, and if we all of a sudden we have this new asset, this new form of collateral that we can pass to our teams, whether we want to pass it to our social media marketing teams, or we want to convert these images into short video clips, right? To see if that will drive more engagement, more dwell time on our pages, maybe lead to more clicks, more add to carts, and more checkouts, right? I think that is something that we want to actually get the data from, because this is a brand new area, right? Like we've never had this ability before. Typically when operating e-commerce stores, right? Like our levers have traditionally been around pricing, right? We can change the title, we can change the description, the tags, we can have reviews and so forth, but we've never been able to use images as a programmatic lever. We've never been able to dynamically update images, change images programmatically to see if that would drive new sales or uplift. And as a result, we don't yet know what happens when that, we don't yet know, I think we can know, we don't yet know what happens once that becomes available to us. If all of a sudden, instead of only focusing on our best sellers, what if by introducing something like this ShopBirdy image system, all of a sudden, let's say the long tail of products gets lifted up. And so now we can actually dedicate special attention to even some of our products that may not be our best sellers, but maybe they just haven't gotten the love or the attention that would help to increase their sales. And then all of a sudden, maybe something like glassware becomes a trend and people start thinking more about glassware, right? Something that is all around us and maybe we didn't really think too much about, but all of a sudden, I think it'd be interesting if glassware starts to become one of those things that just becomes in the trend, right? And the great thing about it is that it's perfectly suited for AI image generation. So why not trial it, right? Why not try, right? These are probably decent margin products, I would imagine. If it's a high quality product, then it could last a very long time. And it's associated with normally with like celebrations and events that people find enjoyable, right? You are having a nice intimate dinner with your significant other. You are celebrating the closing of a deal. Maybe your son or daughter have just been accepted into a great college, or they're landing their first dream job and you want to celebrate. It could be a holiday coming up and you want to celebrate and have a toast and a cheers, or it could just be as simple as you are on a resort, a getaway with friends, and you want to have a cold beverage because you're in a tropical location. So I think that this is like an incredible example of how we can use generative AI, which is the absolute most advanced sort of technology right now, to transform kind of a hundreds of years old industry and to enhance the profile of a simple product that a lot of people probably didn't think about, and massively enhance the productivity of the teams who, let's think about it, right? Out of a whole company, probably only 1% of the total employee base is actually working on Photoshop. And a lot of times you'd have the most senior level people in the company, right? They're setting the tone. They want to communicate the brand. What are the values of the company? Who is our ideal customer, right? So, but there's such a disconnect from the sort of CEO level and the down to the creative person, right? There's not that it's disconnected. It's just there's so many layers. And so if all of a sudden the CEO of the company can then create images and say, here, I'm using natural language prompt, here's what I would like to describe, then the bottlenecks sort of disappear. All of a sudden, the owners of the brand can actually set the creative vision, and then the rest of the team can use these as their references and examples to go through and actually enhance and refresh that brand. I think that is a very powerful new paradigm that will be unlocked, because now the CEO of the company can create images as if they were experts in Photoshop, and they can set these as references and say, here are what we want to communicate, here are the settings, and here are the environments, and here's the context, because they would know so much about their brand and their history, and they would know of all the different use cases for their products and all the different customer profiles. So they're the ones who are best positioned to actually communicate that. And the great thing about it is they can communicate this using their natural language and actually generate brand new visuals, right? These are brand new visuals that they can use, and they can contextualize it. They can bring in modern trends. They can take a hundred-year-old legacy company and bring it forth into the modern era and still keep it relevant. I think that's a very powerful thing. So I would love to continue working with brand owners, companies, executives to help create a series of visuals, a gallery that could effectively communicate their product's value proposition and contextualize their product for the occasions and the scenarios in which it would be consumed, it would be used, and help them set sort of a design language for their brand, and then create these assets that they can use either right away, posting it directly to their social media marketing, or helping to replace their the basic images that are on the e-commerce store, or even just providing these as a pipeline of assets that their graphic design team can then take and iterate on top of, right? And then using these as a sort of a feedback loop to make them even better and find out, oh, these prompts work really well, or these particular products are actually optimized for AI. And who knows, maybe it'll become the case where companies will not just design new products using AI, but actually optimize their products for AI in very new and innovative ways. So just as we've optimized our websites for, let's say, like search engine optimization, we might start optimizing products for generative AI to fit within generative AI workflows. I think that's actually going to be a very compelling proposition. And at the same time, I think people are still going to want authenticity. So the feeling of holding this ice cold, holding this glass with a cold beverage while you are in this luxury apartment or luxury hotel on a vacation, on a resort, maybe you are on a team offsite, or you're just taking some time off, and you look out the window and you see a beautiful view, or you're looking over the skyline and you just appreciate the golden hour and all the possibilities that the horizon in front of you presents. I think that tells such a story. And I think what people are going to want to do is they're going to want to make these visuals, they're going to want to realize them in their real life. And you can do things whereby you can actually like create a beautiful visual of your product, and then you can actually like help people make that photo come to life for them, right? Like you want them to live this experience, and you can actually paint the whole picture for them, and they'll feel like, oh wow, how amazing would it be to have a glass of white wine, maybe it's chilled, we're looking over the beautiful view of the New York City skyline, and we're in this brand new luxury condo, and we're celebrating, right? And then that is just a magical moment. And it all came down to this glassware company, but that glassware company is that is like a vessel, is a container for so much emotion. And I just think that that's so powerful. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys for today. Again, just to recap, we have batch generation. It does great for manufactured goods like automotive, steel, glass, ceramics, other things like that, wood, furnitures, and so forth. I think we've now created this new advanced pipeline that can take in your sort of company history, your ideal customer profile, come up with a variety of settings and scenes and environments in which your product would be consumed and enjoyed. And then you can produce these visuals and use them on your e-commerce store, use them in your social media marketing. You can even create video clips from them. All right, that's all for now. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.